In this video, I'll be walking through the book of Job chapter by chapter, pausing on features that I believe will help us appreciate the contribution of this very substantial book. The version that you see displayed is New Revised Standard. If you're curious about the software layout, I'm using the Logos Bible software. As we begin, we meet this character Job, and it's established by the writer how impeccable are the credentials of this individual. Blameless, upright. He is one who fears God. Job we recognize as part of the wisdom literature collection. So for the writer to establish here is one who reveres God, he's saying he is living life just as it should be lived, and in addition, morally upright, turning away from evil. So that we may appreciate the extent of his prosperity, the writer talks about children born to him, and then other resources that he has accumulated. I find it intriguing here in verse 5 that Job's piety extends to the point that just in case his children may have inadvertently sinned, Job, after these feasts that the children are involved in, he offers sacrifices in an effort to please God and to make right any wrong that they may have done. Further then in chapter 1, we encounter the first interaction between Satan, and Job, interaction between Satan and the Lord. Notice what information is exchanged in this first interaction. It is God who raises to Satan the question, "Have you considered my servant Job?" God is the one who points to Job. And notice the divine assessment. There is no one like him on earth. Blameless and upright, and then once again we encounter this language, he fears God and turns from evil. So we want to register that in God's opinion, Job is, in a sense, his human champion, his primary example of someone whose life is devoted to following God. When Satan takes up the response, we find this fear of God language surfacing again. Does Job fear God for nothing? Is there no benefit that he gets? And he proceeds to say, you've put a fence around him and blessed him. So all this riches that have just been cataloged in the previous verses, Satan says, take that away and he will turn away from you. He will curse you to your face. I'm interested that NRSV is helping us recognize what is the writer's presentation of the identity of God in this situation. Notice that it's in small caps, which is a fairly routine modern convention, helping the English reader recognize that the Hebrew reference to God behind this caps version, Lord, is actually the personal name of God that was revealed to Moses when he asked, "Whom shall I say to the elders of Israel has sent me on this mission to set Israel free from Egyptian slavery?" And God responded, "Tell them, I am that I am has sent you." In Hebrew, Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, and then that becomes the name which we suppose was pronounced Yahweh, earlier vocalized incorrectly as Jehovah. So the reason for pointing this out is that in the book of Job, we find very little that smacks of the Israelite faith. There are not references to, for example, to the Exodus, to the Sinai Covenant. It seems like this story could almost come from a different nationality or a different group, except for this. Clearly, the deity governing the interactions in this book is the covenant God of Israel. Next, we learn of the unexpected tragedies that befall the property and the children of Job. And then we see his response. Verse 20, tore his robe, shaved his head. So these are standard expressions of severe grief. And the idea there is that if things are going well, you look good. You have resources to, anoint yourself with oil. That would be perfume, so you smell good. And then your clothing is intact. But when things on the interior have disintegrated through great grief, then the ancient Near East way of expressing that would be to let that come through to the exterior, so that garments would look disheveled, torn, and shaving the head would be an expression instead of looking decent, looking as though things are really not going well at all. And here, falling to the ground, and nevertheless he worships and acknowledges, look, I didn't start out with anything, and so life will wrap up with me not having anything. And then he makes this powerful, powerful confession. The good things that I did enjoy, they were from God's hand, and God has decided to reverse that. I am not going to curse God. I'm still going to bless God. We need to log in this verse 21 of chapter 1, and it's possible to lose sight of it in such a massive book as what do we have here, some 42 chapters in Job. But here is a little saying that, although it's very compact, it's absolutely huge. How many of us today would be able to subscribe to this in all sincerity? How many of us today would I be able to walk in Job's footsteps at this point and say, look, I didn't deserve the good things I began with. God's decided to kind of close off the faucet so those things didn't come out of the spigot. And that does not deter me from saying, God, you are blessed. God, you are to be worshipped. This is a huge indication of what we call, incidentally, and here's a shop talk about Job. We call it disinterested piety. Disinterested piety. Here's what that means. It's saying that what God is looking for are men and women who remain devoted to Him even though they will not get tangible benefit from it. That is to say, they are pious, and here we're using this in the richest sense of the word, not just some external shell of religiosity, but people whose hearts are really 100% devoted to God. And they'll do that even though, in essence, they don't get paid for it. That's the meaning of disinterested. They don't have a sense of, I'll be good because I'll get good. Let's put that in the larger context of wisdom, wisdom literature, wisdom understanding. For Job presents what we call the skeptical wisdom viewpoint. And to appreciate what that is, we want to keep in mind what is in essence, the non-skeptical or the customary wisdom viewpoint. Customary wisdom says this: do good, get good. Live righteously, good things happen. Skeptical wisdom says, I'm a little skeptical whether that always works, because sometimes I do good and bad things happen. Job, classic example. He has been living a life devoted to God. Earlier in chapter 1, we saw that established. But now, or initially, good things did happen. So the first portion of chapter 1 is verifying customary wisdom. Live right, good things happen. But now that's being turned inside out. He's been living right, and bad things happen. That is the primary discussion topic for skeptical wisdom literature, of which Job and Ecclesiastes, incidentally, are our primary examples. We find this topic cropping up in some other places as well. Occasionally there will be a psalm which will take up this problem. Could otherwise be known as theodicy, the problem of evil in an otherwise good world. So we wrap up chapter 1 with Job passing the first test.